Welcome to the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. Today, I am here with a special guest, Mr. Montae, aka the second coach on Team Alpha. How's your day going?
It's going good. It's
I
going
don't,
even.
even, I don't even need to ask that, oh, do I?
You said I'm a special guest. Like now, I feel even more special.
Yeah, well, everybody's a special guest, but you're really special. And I can't believe it took me whatever, we're 60 episodes in, and this is the first time I've had you on. But God, listen, God works in mysterious ways, right? There's timing for everything. You're coming off your first winner in one of the first form challenges, and we're having you on the podcast at the same time because it just worked out with what we wanted to do. So I think there's a reason for it.
Yep, perfect timing. Perfect timing.
So that's the reason I didn't think I need to ask you how you're doing, because I feel like you're still on cloud nine and just smiling ear to ear.
I am. I mean, I was up pretty late last night. I couldn't stop watching that video over and over. There may have been some. There may have been somebody in the kitchen cutting up onions. I don't know. You never like. There may have been some tears flowing.
Hey, I told you this via text. Like, other than having our children, like having someone have success, and just because of the domain and the app that we coach in, the first form app, and having someone win a challenge, it's one of the best feelings there's out there, right? And I understand that. And people ask me all the time, like, hey, Jeremy, why did you give up a leadership role with first form to concentrate on coaching? It's because I love to coach, and I love that feeling, right? Like having someone win and they send you that message or that text, or in this case you got to see it firsthand. Like, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely awesome. Like, I'll never forget that moment in my life. I mean, just like, we connect with these people, we know their whole stories, all the struggles they went through, and just how they take control of their life. Like, there's nothing better than helping somebody go out. And I talked to somebody about this yesterday. It's just like people will go out and lose weight, have abs, all this kind of stuff. But when people like coming off medicines and like heart attack scares, things that were like life was literally could have been gone at any second and just take control. Like that stuff that means the world to me is somebody got a kid got their father back, a wife got their husband back, and it's just awesome. There's it can't be replaced.
100%. And it's winning. It's what you and I've termed winning at life, right? So I say that there's nothing better having someone win the challenge, but there's nothing better having someone achieve their goals. When we set those goals for those individuals and they achieve them, that's what it's about, right? And like, hey, this whole podcast today, guys and gals that's listening, it's going to be on that same thing, right? So that's how mine and Monte's relationship begun. Is he was a winner on Team Alpha before it was Team Alpha, right? He was a winner, and then he became a coach on the same team, and now he's helping other people change their life. So this is like kind of gosh, we just went to the aquarium in the not the zoo, but the aquarium this past weekend. So it's the caterpillar into the butterfly, right? I don't know, we went to that room and there was a bunch of butterflies, and whatever. That's my
Yeah.
analogy.
And the
Hey,
cocoon.
let, let's start with just for those that might not know your history, your heaviest weight, the things that you struggle with. Let's kind of go back and rewind it to the beginning, kind of where you started, brief history there, and then just kind of get into the journey that you and I have had throughout your wellness and your life.
All right. So, I mean, brief history. Starting weight was 400 plus pounds. Don't know the exact weight. I had a scale. The max weight was 400, and when I stood on it, didn't work. So it read error. So that's where we kind of started, and struggled with a lot of things. Addictions. I say addiction to food, like binge eating. I would emotionally eat, and I don't know if it was something that stemmed from when I was younger, what it was, but just loved food and just would not stop eating for anything pretty much. Um,
Was
I
it
had
was it all emotions, or was you able to narrow it down to like a couple?
stress when I was stressed, or you know, it's kind of a lot of emotions because it was like when I was stressed, I was eating. When I was happy, I was eating. I would celebrate, I would eat. It was just always everything involved eating. But I think stress, when I would get stressed or mad at stuff, that was the biggest things that really brought it out in me. So um and then was that my heaviest weight? Obviously, I ended up suffering an injury playing a sport And when I suffered that injury is when I actually went up even higher than whatever I was. I know I gained a lot of weight in that time. And looking back, going brief, I remember being in my house one day. I was a teenager, 18, 19 years old, and I was having chest pains. And I was like, I have to do something. I have to change my life. Um, because I've seen my family's history with all their struggles and stuff. And I was just like, got to make the change. So I kind of just started doing some home workout programs, et cetera. Started losing weight. Finally, I remember stepping on the scale and seeing, I think it was 397. So I got below that 400. Um, and it just kind of kept going from there.
And I would say you were probably pushing to fifth, or sorry, 450 or higher, right? Just because at 6'8",
Yeah.
I don't want to say, I think saying hiding your weight is a bad term, but at 6'8", you can carry quite a bit of mass, right? So I would
Right.
say you were probably at least pushing, 450, if not higher,
It
right?
could have definitely been because I mean, the first few months I was like going all out. Like I completely changed my diet, cut back on. I mean, I used to drink 2 liters of soda. I completely cut all that out, and there was a huge difference in the pictures, right? Because I didn't know the actual weight because of the scale. There was a huge difference in the pictures, but I was 3, 4 months in, and when somebody's that heavy and we make those drastic changes like that, start moving, start getting rid of the soda and stuff like that, we drop a good amount of weight. So I mean, it was 3 months in of being very strict with everything that I
Before,
saw that
before you
397.
saw 399, yeah. So I would say at least above the 450, if not even higher, like you said, if it was 3 months. So just kind of wanting the listener to understand that, right? Like, that is a lot of weight. That is a lot of emotional baggage that comes along with that, right? And you were even starting to see some of the physical elements at a young age.
Correct. Yeah. So then got going with that, ended up having success, right, with home workouts, changing up the diet, got down to where I had lost 136 pounds. And this was pre first form. So I kind of just did it on my own, didn't have a lot of support around me. And then that caught up with me. So I got down, had a little bit of success. I was feeling good, feeling like I was top of the world. And without the extra support, old habits started coming back in and ended up gaining all that 136 pounds back. And from there, it was just like a roller coaster. So I was like, okay, I need to get back on track. I know what I need to do. I would start doing the same habits that got me back to where I was. I would lose the weight. And then same thing would happen again. I would just get to that point where I felt like I was the reason that I got to where I was, and it wasn't the habits. And as me and it's the habits that get us there. And as soon as we stop those things, it's really easy to go back the other way. And I touched that hot stove many times. So it was probably 8 or 9 times, 8 or 9 times in my journey where I did that same thing. I kept having success. And then it was like, okay, I'm doing good. Like I'm starting to feel good. I look good. I'm gonna go enjoy this. I'm gonna enjoy that. And then kind of just slipped back the other way and was never able to realize or catch when I was doing that and going back the opposite way.
Yeah, two things out of that is, we all are going to have a pendulum. I want people to understand that. Anytime that you're, on a wellness journey, no matter what that is, training for bodybuilding show, training for Ironman, training for a 5K, fill in the blank. You're training for something, you're working out towards something, you're doing well on the program. There's going to be this pendulum that swings back, right? And as you mentioned earlier, in the beginning, it was just I'm doing this program, or I'm doing this diet, or I'm doing this. And the problem with that is if you're treating it as that, okay, you're treating it as whatever, then what happens is when that's done and it runs the course, you fall back to the old habits, right? So I want people to understand that, especially if you're a new listener, that is normal, okay? That is why we are big on teaching habits, right? And replacing bad habits with good habits, stacking habits on top of things that you're already doing so that you don't have as big a pendulum swing once you're done.
Yeah. And then from there, kind of fast forwarding through those ups and downs where I kind of ran into first form and found first form. And found some coach named Jeremy Mullins.
Who dat?
Who's that? So got into well, we didn't even have an app then. We didn't even have an app back then.
No, not. I don't think we had it when you first come over. I think we just had the challenge.
Yeah, just had the
Yeah,
challenge.
just had the challenge at the time. The app wasn't developed. We were just. I think I
You
was
you were doing
just
Facebook
out.
check-in.
Yeah, we were still doing the papers.
Yep. And then fast forward a little bit from that, like I had a little bit of success, and then that the app came along, which was like game changing. And you were my first advisor in the app, um, and had success inside of the app. Jeremy came to me, told me like the habits I need to focus on. Resistance training, the walking, higher protein, right? Making sure we're getting water and prioritizing sleep. Started having success in there. Don't remember the exact amount of weight I originally lost when I came into it, but then Montae, they love to touch that hot stove, decided like, hey, I don't need Jeremy anymore. So kind of got away from the app, got away from the community, started slipping back up. Once again, it happened multiple times before. I remember coming to you and you like had a conversation with me. You're like, listen, like I will work with you, but there's that but we need to make this a lifestyle and practice these habits to where you could go out, because he knew like if I didn't do this, I was going to go back to the food that I love to eat pretty much, and the old habits. So he's like, you need to do this and learn to make this a lifestyle where you can enjoy foods that you like to eat, obviously not over consuming them, and just focus on primarily eating whole food sources, good quality foods. And he was like, I'll work with you, but you need to be able to go out to a restaurant, go out to dinner with your wife and not take a Tupperware, because I've been through that, right? I've had my green beans, my turkey, and taking this to Thanksgiving dinner, or even going to restaurants and asking a server at a restaurant to heat it up for me, which, I mean, there's people out there that can do that every day. You have your bodybuilding shows, and I respect it, but like that wasn't what worked for me, because I would always go backwards.
Well, and that was the thing. It wasn't that I'm against that for people doing that if that's a lifestyle and they're going to continue to do shows every year, right? But your problem it could become was that was kind of your crutch. Like you knew that you could do, lean beef, broccoli and rice. I think it could have been a different veggie, from what I remember. But if you did that 4 or 5 times a day and protein shakes, right? Like whatever that is, you do them that day in and day out, like it would work for you. The problem was each time that pendulum would swing way back to the other side, right?
Right. We
And what
run
I
to the
was,
end of the
yeah,
challenge. Then the challenge, or the end of like whatever it may, or get to that goal weight. And then there's that end date mentality there. And it was just like, okay, we're at the end. What now?
yeah. And I think, one of the things that remember, like I had no idea if your wife was, complaining that you couldn't go out to eat with her. I just picked that. What I was trying to do was have a emotional conversation with you that like, hey, I want you to build, and I guess I could have said when you're little and was old enough to have pizza that, hey, I want you to be able to have pizza on your kid's birthday and them see you eat a slice of pizza, right? And know that it's normal, right? Not that you're eating out of a Tupperware bowl at their sixth birthday, right? And once again, I'm not saying that people that there can't be short-term sacrifices to produce a goal, right? But if you don't have the ability to go to a birthday party, to go to an anniversary dinner, to go to a wedding and make good choices, then that's on you. You haven't learned the habits, right? You haven't learned the habits and the self-discipline yet to be able to have long-term success. So and once again, I'm not preaching at Montae here, just speaking of why I had that message back to him and speaking to the listeners on, hey, finding that balance is what you need to do.
Yeah, and you were 100% correct, right? Because I was eating different dinners than my wife. We were having to get groceries for two different things, and it wasn't. It's not that she was mad about it, but it wasn't optimal, right? It wasn't a lifestyle, something that we're going to be able to do forever.
Yeah. And it's not for anyone, right? I know that. Unless,
Yeah,
unless they're doing the exact same thing, right? And here's the thing, like even and I talked about this, like Kenny and I, last 4 or 5 days was really tough for me because we're at a softball tournament. I'm not doing any working out on my own because it's just long days of keeping the kids, supporting her, and she's got her bike rides at in. We both ride bikes, right? Like, but sometimes someone else's bike riding is more important training than yours, right? So in some cases, like on the diet aspect, think about that. Like, how frustrating that can be when okay, someone else has a higher priority diet, right? Even though you still eat that same way, right? Like those are just things you have to take in consideration along the journey.
yeah. And then coming up to the last, I could call it the last part, but the one of the last big pendulum swings I had, 2020. man, I'll never forget it. I come home from work one day, and this is like after all the gym shut down and everything for the stuff that went on. And I had gained some weight back from there, wasn't going to the gym, kind of just like lost that touch with the food part of it as well. I was pretty heavy again, and I came home to a positive pregnancy test and figured out I'm gonna be a dad. And then with that, and Jeremy, you know a little bit about this. So my dad was very unhealthy. He was over 600 pounds. And just thinking about my like childhood, right? My dad was always there for us, and I always tell people like, love my dad to death. Um, but there was a lot of things he wasn't able to be there for. You know, when I went back to college to play basketball, my first game that I ever got to play, you know what I'm saying? It would have been awesome to have him there. And he was still around then, but physically he just couldn't make it to that game. Um, my little sister, when she got married, you know, I had to walk her down the aisle because he couldn't even make it to the wedding. There's just a lot of points in my life that I remember where he wasn't able to be there because of physical health, right? And when I found out I was going to be a dad, I was just like, the thought that went through my head when I saw it was like I was so happy, right? But at the same time, that kicked into my head and was just like, I am not physically ready to do this because I don't want to like miss those things. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna have a girl or boy at this point, but I do not want to miss any kind of events from something that I can control being my health.
Yeah. And that's tough, right? And both you and I have lost our dads within the same relatively time frame, and we can look at it and say, like, if they would have done some things different with their lifestyle choices, they may have been able to do more things, or be here longer, right? And that's tough, right? And it's not, well, told you so, or you should have did this. I'm not saying that, but
Right.
what you and I take out of that is, that is a direct derivative or driver for us of why we want to be healthy, right? It's not necessarily, ooh, look at my, lean biceps and my muscles, or whatever the case is. Like, oh, those things are nice byproducts of us living this healthy lifestyle. But it's to have the ability to go to your kids, and hopefully your grandkids, sporting events, right? Those are the things that we're looking at doing. So I totally get that thought process, and how that kind of hits home and hits different, when there's little ones that come into this world.
Yeah. And I think about too, and there's that video you've talked about before where, you know, the mom gets out of the car and like not making fun of her by any means, but she gets out of the car and the stroller starts to roll towards the street and she falls down and like she can't pick herself up. And luckily there was a civilian there that like grabbed the stroller because there was a car coming right at that stroller. And it's like you think about moments like that and just like being able to play with the kids or just protect or save them if you need to. And I would just hate to ever be in a position where my physical health stopped me from being the father that I want to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. God, I mean, God is so true, right? Like, the ability, and this take me off a little bit of your story and get on a soapbox, but like the ability for fathers right now, I think, to protect, and I'm not saying that the woman can protect, don't get me wrong there, right? But if I'm speaking from dads to dads out there, like, sit back and ask yourself, if something went down, no matter where you're at, right? And I know right now we're in vacation season. So look around when you go vacation, just be a people watcher for 20 minutes and think about things that could happen in situations, right? And I don't wish these things to happen, but could you save your family, right? Could you sprint 50 meters, pick up one of your kids and sprint back 50 meters and then get to safety, right? Or could you fight someone, that you need to for 2 to 3 minutes to get away, or whatever the case may be? Like, do you physically have that in you? And the reality is, most people don't. They don't have the physical capacity. Not that they don't want to, but they don't have the physical capacity, especially if that person that is trying to do harm is in physical shape, right? If they're bigger, faster, stronger. And I got it. Adrenaline can do a lot of things, but that's the reality is, and it's a sad reality. So I know it's a soapbox. I'm sorry. I'm going down the rabbit hole for a second, but that just, I've spoken on that before, and it means something to me. And hopefully, people hear this, and they think, you know what, Jeremy's right on this. I need to do better there. Then it's worth the rant.
Yeah, I threw you on that soapbox, but like I said, I think it was very worth it for people to hear that. So moving forward, 2021, got started with the New Year's challenge. So real quick, backtrack. 2020, that happened. I got back on track, started using the app, developing small habits. It wasn't just all in at first, right? It took me a little bit to pick things back up. It's hard to just jump right back in. So just started making some healthier food choices again, habits that have worked in the past, tracking my food, and then had a little bit of success. And then coming to 2021 was probably the first year that I didn't go into it with the challenge mindset. Like it was like, this is because I didn't wait, right? I started when right then. It wasn't I'm gonna wait till Monday. It wasn't I'm gonna wait to the New Year's challenge. It was like I need to start because this is about overall health. So coming into 2021, New Year's challenge, got signed up, and I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm gonna go win this challenge this year. I was just like, we're gonna use the app, use Jeremy. I'm gonna use this coaching and go out and have success so I can get back to where I need to be the father like we just talked about. Had success in the New Year's challenge. Don't remember the weight drop, but we had made plenty of progress in there after the New Year's challenge. Kind of took a step back from tracking a little bit. Actually, I had did 75 hard, so it went about 15 days after the New Year's challenge, and then took a step back from tracking and was trying to learn how to navigate having success without tracking and without how to not have that huge pendulum swing backwards. And with inside of that, like I was still learning. So there was a little bit, but it wasn't near as much as usual, right? I kind of did some things off track, started sliding back a little bit, but I maintained enough to where when we came into the spring transformation challenge, that I was able to have success. And it's one of those things that's where it's like when you have success in this journey, you're kind of going up. And instead of doing this, the roller coaster, it was like, okay, you're having success, and then kind of just maintain things for a little bit. Then we had that next season of life where it was time to push again. And then I pushed. So started going up again with that. Um, and just getting back to those habits, tracking the food, focusing on protein and calories, the resistance training, the walkings. And then, of course, summertime comes around after that. We have barbecues. We have this season of life where a lot of people are getting together. There might be some drinks, vacations. And something big that I did this time was like, okay, yes, I get that this can be a hard time in this journey. I was like, I had to remind myself, why are you doing this? Why are you starting? Is it because you're trying to look good? No. I was like, it's because you want to be that father, and just reminding yourself of the reason why you start. I think a lot of people have that itch or that burn to start. And then once we get so far in the journey, we completely forget about it. And I went back and reminded myself of the day I came home and was like, okay, there's a pregnancy test, had those emotions come back up of my childhood events and things that happened when my father couldn't be there. So then we went to the summer challenge, and I'm pretty sure I had really good success in the summer challenge, even with summer, even with vacations, even with enjoying life, right? I still went to parties, family get-togethers, birthday parties. Excuse me. We went to a beach trip to Florida, and I stayed on track as much as possible and just maintained things. After that challenge, went into what was coming up to the fall challenge, right? And this is when things really, really kicked off. Because right before the fall challenge start is when my dad passed away. And then like it just made everything hit that much harder. Like the reason I started everything just was it was there in my face, right? I watched my dad go, and I told myself like that was the hardest month or so of my life. And it reminded me, and I was like, I really never want to see my daughter like because I completely overskipped that part. Daughter was born back in May. We're in October now. But I was like, I never want to see my daughter like watch me suffer like that. And I'll never forget, I was talking to my dad like right there towards the end, and he said he was scared and he said he had a lot of regrets in life. And that's one of the like last things that he said to me. And I can only just guess what those regrets were. I'm pretty sure he wanted to be around for us a lot more than he was. I'm pretty sure he wished he took care of himself more so he could be there in our lives, like physically a lot more. And that's something I tell my parents all the time. It's like, I want to be here with my kid, so I don't have time to go to the gym. And I try to express it to them, the importance of like, I wish my dad would have took 2 hours a day, I mean 30 minutes a day to go away and invest in himself, right? So he can be with us here long term instead of those 30 minutes an hour that he would be going to work out, if that makes sense.
No, because over time you gain more time, right? Or in your case, like you were saying, you would gain some of those memories that you mentioned earlier of just being able to physically be there, right? Physically be at games or physically be at weddings, that type of stuff. And I think one thing I want to point out is up to the story where we're going, you've now built habits, right? So we talked about it. Like you've not let that pendulum swing like you have in the past. Now you've got this catalyst of your father passing where you're ready to make a push, right? But the cool thing about it, for the three quarters of the year so far, you got a little bit better. That pendulum didn't swing back. It may have swung back a little bit from the standpoint, if you think about, like, if I say, okay, if we look at a pendulum, and I know the viewers can't see this unless you're watching YouTube, right? So over here is really bad, right? And then we swing this pendulum over here to where we're rocking and rolling, doing really well. Well, okay, the pendulum does swing back a little bit, during those phases of life, but you're still maintaining. And then literally my fingers are cramping right now. This is what happens when you have to wear a a brace for 2 months, and then you try to supinate the hand. So, your pendulum did swing back a little bit to here, but then you're able to push it back to here, right? So you're still letting the pendulum still swings a little bit in your journey, but
Right.
not doesn't swing back so far that you're having bad results, right? And you kind of mentioned earlier in a different analogy, hey, you're doing really well climbing this mountain. And it's not that you went back down the mountain, you just kind of plateaued out for a little bit, right? Then you started pushing again, climbing your mountain, if you're looking at it as a climbing as the analogy. So I think that's something I want the listeners to understand is, as you go along these journeys and you really learn that these programs out there are building habits, and it's the habits that are going to put you into your success mode, you fall back to those, right? And then when things come around where it's time to push and there's motivation there, you can lean on that and then go back to what you've done many times in the past, right? Where you've had good results in a short period of time.
Yep. And that's what I just got back to that for right after this happened. Just got into the fall challenge. And like I said, it was the toughest time of my life. And I started letting some old habits slip back in. So then I was like, okay, time to dial it back in because I really need to do this now. Like there's zero other options. And then had really good success in the fall challenge. And that's the one I ended up winning for inside of the first form Legionnaires. So won the first place in that, became one of Jeremy's winners, one of 30, what is it,
Right,
30 now?
I feel like we had three at that one time, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end,
Katie,
yeah.
and
So I don't want to say it was a peak, because me and you got goals, right?
yeah,
But
right.
yeah, you've become, now we're in the 30s for the team with our two recent winners. So in this last challenge, you had the lifestyle winner with Marcus, and then with gosh, is it?
Firth and the
Oh yeah, is Mertzer? What's her last name? Is it Firth? I always butcher. It's Firth. Am I saying it right?
that's how I pronounce it.
Firth. Yeah, it looks like almost like fifth, but it's got an R in there. And Metzger, sorry, Metzger. There we go, Metzger. Her and her significant other, they won the partner challenge. So we're in the 30s now. I have to go back. Honestly, I quit counting because life has just gotten so busy. But maybe I need to bring it back out so we can be like, yeah, we're going to push it in the 40s. And that's our goal. Like our goal is to produce winners every time, and it's based on the systems and based on systems of habits and these things that we're talking about. So, but yeah, you won, and then we had some conversations, and I had this vision of hey, there's only so many people I could coach, and at the time I was still doing a lot of leadership stuff at First Form, that took up a lot of time. So even I didn't know if I could coach more people, and the idea was bring you on so that my education could touch more people, and we could grow a bigger team. That's where Team Alpha kind of grew out of. And Alpha, we just used it as the first mega team that was being produced. And the vision was that another leader would step up and have Team Bravo as we drive this out. So now it is you and I right now. Hopefully to add other advisors later on down the road inside the First Form app. That is Team Alpha. You have your own downline of individuals. I have my downline of individuals. We do group education each week via Zoom calls, and then we have a Facebook group together. And I guess last part of that is we have a weekend, in the fall that we do together at headquarters. We bring, Team Alpha together and just, spend some time out there at HQ, learning people and getting to spend that quality time with them.
Yeah, that's a great weekend. Great weekend.
So one part of education I do want to touch on is what you and I have termed, the snowball. Okay, so let's just talk a little about, some news listening to the podcast today. While we're not big out of like, oh, okay, come out of the gate, I want you to do 5 hours of cardio this week and, crank your protein up to 300 grams. Like, and why we don't do that like from day one, right? Let's talk about our snowball, theory and why we like to slow play things. But as the snowball gets to be built and it starts going forward, we have no problem pushing that snowball down the hill faster.
Right. Yeah. I mean, going into it, it's just pretty much if somebody comes in and you're like, hey, eat 300 grams of protein, walk 5 hours a day, and we haven't built those same habits that we've been talking about, it's more likely to drive somebody away. And we have to get that going before we can go all in on something, right? You have to build habits and build the baseline, because you can't take something to the next level if there's no starting level, right?
100%. And I think, a good way to look at it, let's just say we got a guy, let's try to relate this to a challenge, right? A challenge specific. Our challenge is inside the First Form app. They're 8 weeks long. So we have a guy that comes to us, he's 250 pounds. Okay. We will probably start this guy somewhere around 2,500 calories and around 200 grams of protein, right? Because he needs to be 200 pounds. He's 250. He burns roughly 10 calories per pound per day. So 2,500 calories, 200 grams of protein. That's where we're going to start him at. We're going to ask him to walk an hour a day. We're going to ask him to follow a strength and conditioning program inside the app. Okay. Once he does that, right? And let's say that maybe, he does that the first 4 or 5 days. We happen he happens to check in or message us or whatever. And we take a look at his profile and we see that, we'll just call this individual John. John's already hitting 200 grams of protein out of the gate, right? Like he's built his snowball fairly quickly. He's already walking an hour a day and he's following a strength and conditioning program because, he used to work out. So that's not an issue with him. Walking is kind of new. Well, with that person, we might be able to increase protein to 230, 240 grams by the start of the next week, right? We might be able to ask him to, hey, can you give us, an hour and 15 minutes of walking? So you already gave us an hour every day because you got a dog and you said you like to get up and walk that dog. So that's how we build that snowball, and we can build it quicker in individuals that are getting started, and hitting those marks. But if folks are not hitting those marks, it's hard to really drive and push the snowball and build it faster.
Right. And I mean, you talked about it before. It's like if you can give somebody a perfect set of numbers and what to do to go and get results, you'd be living on an island somewhere, right? Because these are the baseline things. So we have to see how your body's responding to these starting set of macros, right? The movement that you're doing before we are adding anything to it or taking away. That just gives us that we know what's going on now, so we know how to make those adjustments.
100%. And one of the things I've noticed too, like with hunger, is if someone's coming to us and they're eating a standard American diet where they're eating fast food a couple times a week, generally overeating carbohydrates, undereating protein, it's hard to drop calories, right? If you pull someone's calories down, they get super hungry. So what happens when your body does adapt to burning body fat for fuel? Once you're 2, 3, 4 weeks into your journey where your body's using body fat for fuel, we can actually be more aggressive in dropping carbohydrates and fats, what we consider the fuels inside the diet, and not have hunger issues. That's the other thing that I think is key about building the snowball first before just trying to push it down the hill, because that hunger cues and those hunger drives are going to really be there in the beginning, until someone starts losing that weight over time.
100%.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I'm going to wrap it up. We've been on here a little bit today. what is probably one thing that if someone was a new listener today that you would recommend, right? And what I mean by that is think about, hey, you're hopping in the elevator with someone, they ask you what you do for a living, you let them know you're a wellness coach, and they were like, well, what do you want me to do? What would be that one line sentence, elevator spill that you would give to someone to start their wellness journey?
Increase movement and increase protein.
I like it. Keep it simple, right? Simple is sexy.
You do
You
those
guys have
things.
heard it. Yes. Guys, in this season of life, I like to call it seasons. Monte is going to be on the podcast actually about one time a week. We are going to be covering a lot of first form supplements, the benefits from them, what is inside of the supplement, when it comes to something that maybe has multiple ingredients in it. It's pretty easy with a protein powder, like, hey, it's a whey protein isolate. That's what's in it. But we might get into something, for example, like OptiGreens that has multiple things in it, right? So we're going to start doing a little bit, some education on some sports, or sorry, some specific supplements along the way. And we'll also talk about, off usage, right? A lot of people, I'll just use an example, Formula One. Yes, it is designed for the post-workout setting, but you could also use it for breakfast, right? Because you haven't ate anything in 8 to 10 hours. So there's a lot of different things that, we can say off-label use when it comes to supplements. So we're going to cover both of those in some series coming up. So you guys will get to hear a little bit more from Monte over the course of the next 6 months. We appreciate you guys for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Thanks, brother.